one of the poor regions of Romania is southern part which borders Bulgaria, and uh, I would like maybe to ask a few questions about the relations with Bulgarians, um, because it's a little bit counterintuitive or surprising what exists. Um, these are two countries in NATO and the EU, and there are a number of historical links between the people, but at the same time, they seem possibly distant, unaware, not knowing one another, not associating very much one another, and maybe also at the level of states, there is certain competition, and um, to the extent that they make something together, they also seem to be positioning uh, generally different on various important foreign policy issues. So, how much the relation with Bulgarians can help Romania uh, develop its poor regions of the south? How much there is potential for something in the Bulgarian-Romanian relations in your view?
It's a very interesting question, and you're right. It's very puzzling for lots of observers when they see the quite low level of interrelationships between Romania and Bulgaria. I think we have to reason in terms of historical and cultural arguments. And if we take the Romanian side, um, uh, the relations and the way Romania perceives its different neighbors are very interesting. So in relation with the Tsarist Empire and then with Ukraine, that was more or less historically considered a distant heir in the area of the remainings of the Tsarist and Empire and the USSR. Romania had quite distant relation also with regard to Moldova. There was a brotherhood, big brother like relation conceived by Romania after the 1990s. In relation with Hungary, there was a continuous competition, and sometimes this led to even disputes over, of course, Transylvania and the minority issues. The so more friendly neighbor up to the wars in former Yugoslavia was Yugoslavia and, of course, Serbia out of Yugoslavia. And this left a very marginal place for the relations with Bulgaria. Um, Historically, I think that there was a culture of I wouldn't say despising, maybe it's a too strong word, but rather looking down to Bulgaria. Generally, Romania had more powerful neighbors, strong nation states, and especially former great kingdoms and empires. And of course, there was a complex of inferiority in relation with them. Now, in as far as Bulgaria is concerned, Romania developed strangely some sort of a complex of superiority, and this is also impregnates also the competition within the EU between Romania and Bulgaria. Unfortunately, to avoid the last place in the EU in terms of macroeconomic indicators, in terms of level of living, of wages, and standards, and so on. So I would rather say that unfortunately this cultural strange heritage, not being interested in, but knowing that those neighbors in the south are not really like we are maybe on a an inferior level of development, did not help at all to develop the relations and to create a common destiny. And this is, of course, not only a pity but also bizarre, because Romania and Bulgaria are nations who had a common past, if we think historically to the long-lasting Bulgarian-Romanian Tsarat, and moreover, they are both now and have been both now in the European Union, partners in the European Union's partners in NATO, and so relations could and should be much more intense. And it's a pity because also the frontier cooperation, the regional cooperation, and the frontier levels between the two countries is quite low, while the European Union itself uh, offers numerous possibilities of financing important projects for building euro regions, for building transfrontier cooperation, and that's something that the two governments should really consider in the future, especially nowadays with the new geopolitical threats over us.
Okay. You mentioned that the EU provides opportunities for development of cross-border relations. In this regard, what could be the role of the Danube strategy, or what could be the potential for developing of common infrastructure in terms of bridges and other connections, such as energy connections, etc., between the two countries?
I think that both the Danube strategy and other major projects are still on a political declarative level, and they are not substantive enough. Um, there is an important opportunity nowadays to put together human resources in order to establish realistic mini strategies of development of different infrastructures across the Danube, and also to co-create hubs for development. And if we take into consideration the Giurgiu area, there is a huge potential for also the transport over Danube, but also for lots of investments in creating hub for the Northern Balkans there, in order to spray over in different small and medium enterprises in fields such as agricultural with new technologies and so on. So I believe that unfortunately, even if even in these areas where the EU leaves a certain margin of maneuver to the states, especially if they cooperate with each other within the European Union, our two countries were not enough able to produce meaningful results.
It's been often given as an example that the Bulgarian-Romanian turnover in trade is very high, somewhere around 6.57 billion euro per year. But there is a catch here that it is mostly generated by foreign companies, by corporations which trade with one another in the two countries. So there is an issue apparently related with the autochthonous or own dynamics in the Bulgarian-Romanian relations. Apparently, the partners of the two countries are maybe more interested in the development of relations for strategic or for economic reasons. But how could the dynamics between their own dynamics of Bulgarians and Romanians in these relations grow? Um, if there is an issue related with trust or attitude or indifference or despise, attitude of despise between them, do you think that it is again the people uh, who could be some kind of bridge of friendship or some kind of enforcers, developers, engines of these relations? And what conditions or what project or initiatives should be created if that is possible, so that the people can develop these ties in the conditions when the state allies maybe will continue to differ on many issues.
I think that the frontier on the Danube is still seen much more than necessary as being a thick frontier. And of course, if both Romania and Bulgaria would be in Schengen, then the frontier would naturally disappear or quasi disappear. And of course, as we know from the experience of many other countries, let's take the Austrian Hungarian frontier or Austrian Hungarian Croatian frontier and so on. This is a very important determining factor uh, pushing for more cooperation. Of course, you're very right. The fact that autochthonous capitals do not really exist in the two countries. If we take huge sectors such as oil industry, banking systems, or retail services, I think that both in Romania and Bulgaria, there is almost no autochthonous capital, and all the companies are owned by German, French, Austrian, and other such mother companies. This, of course, limits the margin of maneuver of the state to channel these forms of cooperation and to push for more cooperation between Romania and Bulgaria. But as you said, also rightfully, there is a high level of intra-company trade between the two countries, which shows that the cooperation is nevertheless real to some extent. So, all in all, I believe that the transformation of this thick frontier into a thinner one, which could be, of course, done within Schengen, but the states could prepare and push much more for that in the future. I mean, the Romanian and the Bulgarian state is the condition of possibility to have a different perception of each other and to see each other as potential partners for development.
Okay, how much could, in the case that the countries are not admitted to Schengen once again in the autumn, how much could the idea of their own mini Schengen space be viable? I mean, Bulgaria and Romania to eliminate the border control and somehow through this elimination prove that they can manage their own border, Schengen border, and also generate more economic dynamics between them.
Yeah, I'm really very favorable to this initiative. I also spoke on other occasions about this. I think that these grassroots initiatives are encouraged by the EU itself, so you can get even some important EU funding in order to erase your frontiers, so to say. But for the moment, I think that the level of common trust of the two governments in each other is not very high. If we take into consideration the perception the two countries have mutually of each other, the way politicians of the two states regard or misregard, disregard the other decision makers from the other state, respectively. I think for the moment the conditions are not really ready, but of course there is a strong need to promote such initiatives. And I also believe that if the mini Schengen space between Romania and Bulgaria uh, becomes a reality to some point, things will would not stop there. So the effect will be much more important as far as the initiatives for development will be, and it will be some sort of a model for the other states also.
Mm, how much could some cultural initiatives between the two countries be useful in the building of trust, such as, for example, opening of cultural centers in the two capitals, or maybe some media or NGO projects that promote mutual knowledge, understanding, etc.
Such projects are very important. Of course, they create the ground for more cooperation, but they will not be enough. I think that even on this level, there are quite few initiatives, not too many of them, that put together NGO activists from the two countries, for instance, or I did not witness any fever of creating cultural centers, Romanian in Bulgaria and the other way around. And For the moment, I think that both countries, maybe even to some extent, it's more the fault of Romania than of Bulgaria, uh, are oriented towards the West and not towards the partner country in the region. And this, of course, prevents cooperation and leaves it at the level of some ceremonial events, some rare, maybe visible, but still very rare common initiatives on the ground of civil society or culture.